Hello, I'm Keith with the Trombone Shop at Schmidt Music, back with another instrument review for you. And today I've got a model that is new to us in the shop, certainly not new out there in the world. We just haven't had it in before, specifically the Yamaha YSL-445G straight medium bore tenor trombone. I realize I end up talking a lot about, all of our new professional level models coming from all of our manufacturers, which are of course, really, really exciting. But, there is a host of other instruments, our intermediate level instruments, right? That are not necessarily designed to be that professional custom level instrument, kind of experience, but they absolutely have a place and they deserve to be talked about. The 445G is a really, really great example of that. So I'm excited to share it with you. I'm going to take a play, talk about it afterwards. I'm going to be playing everything today on my trusty S.E. Shire's Michael Davis Plus mouthpiece. So in taking a look at the Yamaha 445G, we've got a couple of different unique items that I'm not always talking about in my videos. First off, medium bore stay straight tenor trombones. Now, obviously, this is a segment of our world that is not as common as our small bore tenors, as our large bore tenors with F attachment, as our bass trombones, etc. But our medium bore tenors and our straight medium bore tenors in particular, they have a place, right? We just don't end up being able to talk about it all the time. And then the other side of that coin are what we consider intermediate level instruments. So kind of just to give you a little bit of nomenclature here, kind of, in our world, at least the way I approach it, we have really 4 different levels of instruments in the trombone world: student, intermediate, professional, and custom. And really all that means is, first off, who is the instrument designed for? Who is doing the designing, how skilled are they at the designing, and who is doing the actual building, the manufacturing, the craftsmanship behind it, how much time are they putting into that process, right? And so as we go through, obviously our student level instruments are designed for our students. We have this next step here that are designed for advancing players. They're designed, they have a little bit more work put into them. They're a little more advanced, but they don't necessarily have the time and craftsmanship put into them from our professional level instruments, and then obviously getting into our custom, like super hand-built instruments. But they all have a place within this. And like I said, one of the things I realized that I don't talk as much about some of our intermediate level instruments, which is actually something I'm going to be trying to kind of address here to a point here. But this is going to be a good place to start with the 445G here. So, like I said, in general, we don't see a ton of call every day for straight medium bore tenors, but they absolutely, again, have a place. There are any number of different settings that they can work really, really great in, or player types that they work really, really well with. So, a few things first off about the 445G here. So this is has an 8.5-inch gold brass bell. I'd say kind of a medium weight bell, which we'll talk about here. Yellow brass reverse tuning slide here, fairly wide, kind of a dual radius crook here, which again we'll talk about a little bit here. Obviously medium bore tenor, so it's a 525 bore hand slide with one piece yellow brass outer tubes and yellow brass crook here. So again, one piece versus 2 piece, we'll talk about that as well. So this, and it does have a large bore sibling, the 447G, which is also a straight tenor, in this case, a large bore version of it. And so right off the bat, I mentioned a couple things, kind of the overall, the weight of the instrument, kind of this nice wide crook and everything. To me, one of the things that really struck me when this instrument came in, when I was able to spend some time with it, is that it feels like, for me, a very accessible medium bore tenor trombone. There are certain medium bore tenor designs that still feel a little bit compact to me at times, and sometimes they feel that, again, depending on the design, they can feel a little bit bright or a little bit shrill. I think in a lot of ways, I like this design. It benefits from some of the very typical Yamaha design features. So first off, in general, Yamaha trombones, as we kind of talked about in the past with other designs, they tend to be built a little bit more stable. A lot of times they're using a little bit heavier gauge. They are just, everything is just, it just feels a little bit more solid than other designs. And solid's maybe not the right word, just feels like it has a little bit more density to it. Now, that can have some drawbacks, right? For some folks, it means if things are not resonating the same, maybe it doesn't have the same character, etc. But, what I find with this is in the medium bore design is I feel like it really gives me some stability, something I can lean into, but at the same time, it feels really nicely balanced in terms of the airflow. And I think part of that, might be the bell taper. It has, compared to some other medium bore tenor designs, I'm thinking about things like the classic, like the King 3B Plus, etc. I think it has a little bit more open bell taper here. I think the tuning slide is playing a huge part in that. And within this, it kind of makes sense because, kind of looking through everything, I'm guessing, haven't taken a look, haven't talked to Yamaha, but it really feels to me like they're using kind of like we see with the Bach 36 versus 42, they're really using more or less kind of the 447, the large bore tenor version bell section with the 525 hand slide. Now the difference being there with the 36 versus 42, obviously the 36 is still using an 8-inch bell, a little bit smaller bell, but still using Bach taper, etc. Same kind of concept. And so I think for me, right off the bat, what that means is that this feels like really nice. Again, it's a really balanced airflow. And it lends itself to some really nice settings. I found, especially at soft middle dynamics, and especially in, even in what I consider more of a classical approach at upper dynamics, it felt like I was able to use again, more of a balanced airflow, right? So when I'm playing small bore tenor or alto trombone, I'm compacting down the airflow, right? I'm thinking a little bit faster, a little cooler. With this, I feel like I was able to keep things a little bit broader, maybe not as much as if I'm playing large bore tenor or bass, but I think it's a really, really nice balance. And what I get out of it is that it has this openness, this ring to the sound, being really stable. It has a darkness to it, without getting like super, super heavy and muddy, right? Now, what that does mean is I found, like, for example, on the blues I played, where I was really trying to lean in, right? I was trying to get, bright and edgy. And by the way, you may have noticed in the different excerpts I played, I was trying to do a balance of different genres, right? We're doing some Latin, we're doing some jazz, we're doing, different classical settings where we might use a straight medium bore tenor, right? It could be Mozart, right? It could be something like this. Yes, could you potentially use on something like Bolero? Yeah, you could. So I was trying to kind of give a demonstration of different genres we might be using this in. I felt like when I was really trying to lean into it with the, at the high, more commercial dynamics, right? Where I'm really trying to get that edginess and that brightness to it, I did find it fighting against me just a little bit. Or at the very least, I wasn't able to get that same brilliance and edge as I might be looking for in those particular kinds of settings. Now, that can be a personal approach thing as well within all of this, but I do think, like I said, the overall design concept we talked about, I think does kind of lend itself to having a little bit more of just an overall kind of response and tonal stability within all of this. And again, keeping in mind here that this is designed to be kind of that intermediate level instrument. Now, to some folks, that just means that it's designed to be less expensive, right? They simplify the design, and no denying that's part of it. I mentioned things, for example, the one piece, outer tubes on the hand slide. If you're not familiar, all that means is that if you take a look for a lot of hand slide designs, not everything, and this is something that manufacturers very consciously play with to change the design, we can have one piece, outer tubes, or we can have outer tubes that have an oversleeve here, right? So oftentimes it's going to be a nickel silver oversleeve that helps to add, not only does it give it a little bit more weight, that having that nickel silver oversleeve tends to give it a little bit different stability, tends to help a little bit with, balancing, projection, but with a lot of times in lightweight designs, right? If we're dealing with like a lightweight nickel silver design, that almost always is using just a one-piece lightweight nickel silver. But another thing we can see from some manufacturers with their intermediate level instruments, where they're trying to simplify the design, keep the price down a little bit, they will use a one-piece design. And here you can take a look. Yamaha's even, kind of drawn the tube to create this kind of faux oversleeve here, but it still is a one-piece, right? And so there are ways that they can simplify the process. It's not cheapening the process. It's not like they're doing anything worse with it. It's just simplifying things so that with the idea that obviously we're keeping the price down, and they're doing specific design conceptions within this that are trying to make it appropriate for a different player in a different place in their playing career, right? So this could be somebody who, maybe they just don't have the same type of air control, the same type of embouchure nuance, the same tonal concepts as a more advanced player. This is something that's designed to be accessible for them. So keeping all of that in mind, I still think this is a great playing instrument all the way through. Like I said, I feel like if I was going to take it into a lot of my high energy commercial settings, I might be pushing a little bit for me personally, but I loved, like on the Latin ballad kind of style there, boy, it just had this lovely, lovely color to it. I felt like I was able to really lean into the sound without it getting, again, like super, super soft and diffuse. I thought through some of the classical setting stuff, I thought it played really, really well. So I do absolutely think it's an instrument with a lot of versatility to it. And, given, I think it's a really great value for the price, all of that included here. So that's my take on the 445G. Obviously, I'd love to have your feedback. So if you want, please leave some comments down below here. Let me know what you think about this, whether what you heard in the video here, maybe you have some experience with the 445, its large bore sibling, the 447, other medium bore tenors. How does this compare? I'd love to have that feedback. Love to have you as a part of our community. If you haven't already done so, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to our channel so that you can be a part of our larger community. And of course, as always, you can find the Trombone Shop on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, thanks for watching.